My name is Rachel. I'm 29 years old. And a few weeks ago, my own family looked me straight in the eyes and told me I was too expensive to take on vacation. It started with what felt like a normal evening phone call. My mom let out a heavy sigh and said, "We're broke. We just can't afford to take you on vacation this year." Before I could even wrap my head around that, my brother laughed into the speaker. It was that familiar sarcastic laugh he always uses when he wants it to sound like a joke, even though it isn't. For a second, I completely froze. I've spent years helping them with bills, loans, and all kinds of small emergencies. And suddenly, I was the extra cost that needed to be cut. I forced out a little laugh and said something polite like, "Yeah, sure, no worries. I get it. Because that's what I always do." I told myself they must really be struggling this time. I convinced myself that skipping one family vacation wasn't a big deal. So I planned a tiny solo trip to New York using my own credit card points. One of those trips where you count every dollar and pretend it's enough. I honestly thought that was the end of it. Then I got to the airport. I was standing in the economy line with my cheap ticket when I heard a familiar laugh behind me. I turned around and there they were, my mom, my brother, and his kids, standing at the first-class check-in. They looked relaxed, smiling, like money had never been an issue at all. The same brother who told me to stay home, so I wouldn't cost them anything, now had his kids waving first-class boarding passes in the air. I didn't say a word. I just stood there and watched. And in that moment, something inside me finally snapped. 2 weeks after that, those smiles were gone. My family wasn't calling me generous anymore. If you want to know how one "we're broke" family vacation turned into the end of me being their personal ATM, stay with me. What happened next is the reason they aren't smiling in those vacation pictures anymore. To understand why that phone call and that airport scene hit me so hard, you need to know how my family has always worked. I live in Houston. I have a pretty normal 9-to-5 job as a project coordinator for an energy company, and I pay my bills on time. I'm not rich. I still have student loans and a budget spreadsheet, but I'm careful with my money. My parents, on the other hand, have lived right on the edge of "we're broke" for as long as I can remember. My dad had heart problems a few years ago, so he stopped working early. My mom works part-time as a receptionist at a small dental office out in the suburbs. My older brother, Matt, is considered the responsible one in my mom's eyes because he has a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage on the nice side of Katie. That responsible label is pretty funny if you ever look at his credit card statements, but my mom never does. In our family, there's always been this unspoken rule. If something goes wrong, Rachel will figure it out. When the electric bill was past due, my mom would call me in that shaky voice and say, "Honey, they're about to shut it off. Can you help just this once?" When Liam wanted to join a soccer league or Ava needed costumes for a school play, my brother would text me, "If you could pitch in a little, it would mean the world. We're tight this month." That "this month" somehow lasted for years. I sent money through Zelle and Venmo so often that my banking app started flagging repeat transfers to the same people. I cut back on eating out, on buying new clothes, even on my gym membership, also I could keep helping my family. Every time I tried to save something for myself, some urgent problem would pop up on their side. What made it worse was the way they talked about my life. My mom would say things like, "You're lucky you don't have kids yet. You can always make more money." My brother loved to joke, "You're the free one. No daycare, no school fees, nothing tying you down." Free, apparently, meant available to pay for everyone else's life. After a while, I stopped even dreaming about big trips. I'd scroll through photos of beaches in Hawaii or cities in Europe and think, maybe someday, when dad's health is stable, when they're caught up on the mortgage, when the kids are older. There was always a reason to put myself last. Then, a few months ago, my company announced a slow period. No bonus that year, no promotions, just the usual paycheck. It scared me a little, but it also woke me up. I was almost 30 and I had never taken a real vacation just for myself. That's when the idea came to me. Instead of pouring my extra money into another one of their emergencies, why not do something for all of us? I thought if we went on a simple family trip together, maybe to Florida or somewhere with a beach and a pool, it would finally feel like I was part of the family, not just the backup wallet. So on that casual evening call before the whole "we're broke" speech, I actually started with, "Hey, I was thinking, what if we did a family trip? Nothing crazy, just a few days. I can help with some of the costs." I expected my mom to hesitate, maybe to say, "Let's see what we can do." Instead, the words came out of her mouth so fast they felt rehearsed. "We're broke. We can't afford to take you on vacation." Then Matt laughed and added that line about me staying home, so I wouldn't cost them money, like I was a line item on a spreadsheet they were cutting. In that moment, something small cracked inside me, but I pushed it down. I told myself maybe they really were drowning. I told myself I was overreacting, and that a cheap solo trip to New York would be enough. What I didn't know yet was that their version of broke and mine were very, very different, and that the next time I saw them, that crack inside me was going to split wide open. A couple of weeks after that call, I was standing in my tiny kitchen, stuffing clothes into a small carry-on, and convincing myself that New York was all I needed. No fancy resort, no all-inclusive package, just a cheap round-trip ticket from Houston to LaGuardia, a friend's couch, and whatever I could cover with credit card points and a bit of savings. I checked in online, saw the word economy on my boarding pass and shrugged. That was normal for me. Middle seat, no early boarding, no free drinks. I told myself it was fine, that I didn't care about first class or beach photos or matching family t-shirts. I Ubered to Bush Intercontinental, rolled my little suitcase inside, and joined the long, slow-moving economy line. It was a typical busy morning. Kids crying, people in suits complaining into their phones, the overhead voice calling out boarding groups. I slipped my headphones around my neck and zoned out, thinking about pizza, Central Park, and maybe a Broadway show if I could find a discount ticket. Then I heard a laugh that made my stomach drop. It was my brother's laugh, that loud, performative sound he uses when he wants everyone around him to know he's having a great time. For a second I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard my mom say his name, and my whole body went cold. I turned my head, and there they were, not struggling at a self-check-in kiosk, not counting crumpled bills for baggage fees. They were standing at the first-class counter. My mom was leaning casually on a sleek suitcase, wearing a new cardigan I'd never seen before. Holding a to-go coffee like this was something she did every week. My brother stood beside her, talking to the airline agent with that confident tone he uses when he's trying to charm someone. His wife, Brittany, was snapping selfies, tilting her head just right, the kids tucked close to her hip. Liam and Ava were bouncing with excitement, waving their printed boarding passes like golden tickets. I watched Ava point up at the sign that said first class, and heard her say, "Daddy, does this mean we get the big seats?" My brother grinned and said, "That's right, sweetheart. We're doing this trip right." And my mom, the same woman who had told me, "We're broke. We can't afford to take you," laughed and said, "After everything we've been through, we deserve something nice." I stood there in my wrinkled airport hoodie, clutching my economy boarding pass, and felt my face burn. There was no sign of stress on them. No trace of that desperate tone my mom uses when she calls me about the power bill. They were relaxed, happy, glowing, like a picture-perfect family in a commercial. For a heartbeat, I actually wondered if I was the crazy one, if maybe their finances had magically changed in the last 2 weeks. But then the agent handed them their tickets, pointed them toward the priority security line, and I saw the destination printed on the tags hanging from their bags. Orlando. They were going to Florida. They were taking the exact kind of family vacation my mom had shut down when I offered to help. My legs moved before my brain caught up, and I turned away before any of them could notice me. I could have walked over. I could have said, "Funny seeing you here. I thought you were broke." I could have made a scene, asked them in front of the kids why I was too expensive to bring while first class wasn't. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I let the line push me forward while they glided toward the shorter, roped-off lane. On the plane, squeezed into a middle seat between a guy who fell asleep with his mouth open and a woman who wouldn't stop tapping on her laptop. I replayed the scene again and again. My mind tried to bargain with it. Maybe the tickets were a gift. Maybe it was some crazy miles deal. Maybe they were embarrassed to invite me because they couldn't pay my share. But beneath all those excuses was one simple, ugly truth I couldn't ignore anymore. It was never that they couldn't afford to include me. It was that they chose not to. For years, they had treated my bank account like an endless well. And when it came time to plan something good, something fun, something they could brag about online, I was the first thing they cut. By the time the plane landed in New York, the crack inside me had become a complete break. The city was loud and bright, and my friends were excited to see me, but part of me was still stuck in that airport, watching my own family act like I didn't exist. I didn't confront them there. I didn't call from New York to scream or cry. I waited. And when I came back to Houston, the very first call my mom made gave me the perfect chance to stop being their invisible backup plan for good. When I stepped out of the airport, the Houston heat hit me instantly, but it was nothing compared to what was waiting on my phone. I hadn't even unpacked when my screen lit up with Mom's name. Normally, I would let it ring once or twice, brace myself, and then answer. This time, I just stared at the screen. I could still see her smiling at that first-class counter, saying she deserved something nice. I took a deep breath and finally picked up. "Hey, Mom." Her voice came through overly bright, fake cheerful. She asked about my trip, if New York was fun, if my flight was okay. I gave short, polite answers. Yes, it was good. Yes, I was tired. We both avoided the real topic, circling around it like something fragile we didn't want to touch. Then her tone shifted into the one I knew too well. That soft, shaky voice soaked in guilt. "Honey, listen. I hate to even bring this up, but things have been so tight since your father's last appointment. The gas bill is overdue. The mortgage company called again. We're really struggling. Do you think you could help out just this once?" Just this once. I almost laughed. For years, every just this once had turned into a permanent habit. My heart started beating faster, not with panic like before, but with anger and something new. Resolve. "Mom," I said quietly, "were you struggling like this when you booked first-class tickets to Orlando?" There was a pause, the kind where it feels like all the air gets sucked out of the room. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice suddenly flat. I didn't let her dodge it. "I saw you at the airport. You mapped the kids, Brittany. First-class check-in. Orlando tags on the luggage. 2 weeks after telling me you were broke and couldn't afford to take me anywhere." She let out a nervous laugh that didn't sound like her usual one. She rushed to explain, saying it wasn't what I thought, that there was some miles and points deal, that my brother worked really hard, that the kids needed something to look forward to after everything with Dad's health. She said it was complicated, her words tumbling over each other, excuses forming in real time, designed to make me feel guilty for even asking. I didn't bite. "What's complicated?" I said. "Is that you told me you were broke, that I should stay home to save you money, and then I watched you pay for the exact kind of trip you said wasn't in the budget. I'm not mad that you went on vacation. I'm mad that you lied to my face and made me feel like a burden." She went quiet again, then tried a different angle. She said I didn't understand, that I don't have kids, that my brother has so many responsibilities. She said they thought I'd get it, that I'm independent, that I always bounce back. There it was again, the story where my life was easy and theirs was impossible. I felt the old version of myself wanting to cave, wanting to say it was okay and send money one more time. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank history, scrolling through a long list of transfers with their names on them. Years of just this once payments. "I do understand," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "I understand that I've been paying for everything that goes wrong while you tell me there's nothing left when it comes to me. That stops today." Her voice sharpened. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm done sending money," I said. "No more covering bills. No more emergencies. No more just until next month." I removed my card from the electric account. I turned off the automatic transfers. "You and Matt need to figure this out without using me as your backup plan." She sounded offended, almost attacked. She said we're family, that Dad is sick, that my brother is drowning, that I was really going to just watch them struggle. I closed my eyes and pictured myself squeezed into that middle seat while they walked past the curtain with their kids. "You didn't mind watching me struggle when you told me to stay home and save you money," I said. "I've helped for years. I'm not your bank. If you could afford first class without me, you can afford your bills without me." She gasped like I'd slapped her. She called me cruel. What's cruel? I said. Is cutting your daughter out when it's convenient for your budget and calling it love when you need her paycheck. She tried to cry, to argue, to twist it into a story where I was ungrateful, but for the first time in my life, I didn't give in. I didn't say fine, I'll send something. When we hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. It felt like I'd finally put down a heavy bag I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what my shoulders felt like without it. The next day, my brother's name lit up my phone again and again, missed calls stacking up, messages flooding in. That's when the real fight started. Matt didn't bother with small talk. After the first missed call came another, then a wall of texts telling me to call him back, saying this was serious, saying I couldn't do this to mom and dad. I stared at the screen the way you stare at an alarm you've heard 1,000 times, and are finally ready to ignore. I had already decided I wasn't running to fix his mess this time, but I also knew he needed to hear it out loud. So when he tried to FaceTime me, I let it ring twice, took a breath, and answered. His face filled the screen, jaw tight, eyes narrowed, angry in that way that comes from fear but refuses to admit it. What the hell, Rachel? He snapped before I could even speak. Mom is freaking out. She says you're cutting her off. What is wrong with you? His voice was louder than it needed to be, like volume alone could shove me back into place. I leaned back on my couch, tucked my free hand under my leg to hide how much it was shaking, and kept my voice steady. Nothing is wrong with me, I said. I just told her I'm done paying everyone's bills. He laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound that made it clear he thought I was being dramatic. Are you serious right now? Dad's sick. The mortgage is behind. The utilities are past due. You're really going to act like you're some poor starving artist when you know you have money. It was almost funny hearing him talk like that, like he had ever once asked about my budget or my stress, like he had seen my bank account at 2 in the morning while I was doing mental math just to make everything work. I pay my rent. I pay my student loans. I pay my own medical bills, I said slowly. And on top of that, I've been paying your emergencies and theirs for years. That's the money you think I just have lying around. He rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. You don't have kids, Rachel, he said, the way someone might say you don't have a clue. You have no idea what real responsibility looks like. Try paying for daycare, school supplies, soccer fees, dentist appointments. You're 30 and all you have to worry about is your stupid gym membership and whatever trip you want to take next. The old version of me would have apologized by now, would have scrambled to prove I understood, would have reminded him of all the times I babysat for free or sent money, so his kids could go on field trips. Instead, I let his words hang there for a second. You're right, I said, and his eyebrows shot up. I don't have kids. That's why I'm not responsible for yours. His mouth fell open, stunned, like he couldn't believe I had actually said it out loud. Wow, he said slowly, shaking his head. You really are selfish. I almost laughed at the irony. Selfish? I repeated. Matt, I watched you take your kids on a first-class vacation to Orlando while Mom was telling me you were broke. You told me staying home would save you money. You cut me out of the fun. You used my money for the boring parts, and then called it family. That's not responsibility. That's entitlement. His face flushed red, and he immediately went on the defensive, words tripping over each other. It was miles, okay? Points. Brittany found a deal. Most of that trip was basically free. I raised an eyebrow. Then why wasn't there room for me? I asked. If it was so free and easy, why did I have to hear, we're broke? We can't afford to take you? He didn't have a real answer. He shifted his phone, looked away from the camera, blamed the airline, the timing, the kids' school schedule, the fact that I live in the city and they're in the suburbs. Anything except the simple truth that they chose not to include me. You would have made it complicated, he finally snapped. You always make everything about you. We just wanted one stress-free trip for the kids. My chest burned, but my voice stayed steady. I didn't even know you were going, I said. You made it very easy to leave me out. I only became complicated when I stopped being useful. He sighed dramatically, like he was exhausted from explaining basic logic to a difficult child. And then he tried the tactic that had always worked before. Look, he said, softening his tone. Whatever misunderstanding you think you saw at the airport, fine. Be mad. But Mom and Dad are about to lose everything if you don't step up. You make more than any of us. You can fix this. There it was, stripped of all pretense. Not can you help, but you will, because you always do. In his mind, my income was already spent and my future was already his backup plan. I shook my head. I'm not a safety net, I said. You planned a lifestyle that depends on me bailing you out every time something goes wrong. That was your choice, not mine. I'm choosing something different now. His eyes narrowed. So you're really just going to sit there and watch our parents drown? He said, his voice rising, like volume alone could shame me back into line. I thought about everything they had actually done for me, and everything I had quietly done for them. No, I said softly. I'm going to watch you finally learn how to swim without tying a rope around my neck first. He stared at me through the screen, breathing hard, searching my face for the weak spot I used to have. Unbelievable, he muttered. You'll regret this. When Dad's health gets worse, when Mom can't handle things, when they really need someone, don't come crying to me. I almost smiled, not because any of this was funny, but because the idea of me ever relying on him was almost absurd. I've never once come crying to you, I said. But you've had no problem calling me every time a bill shows up with your name on it. That ends now. He cursed under his breath, called me cold and heartless, said I was turning my back on my own blood, said I was letting money ruin the family. I let him say it all, every guilt trip, every recycled line about how real family shows up no matter what. And when he finally paused to breathe, I did something I had never done before in any fight with my family. I ended the call first. I hung up and sat there for a few seconds, phone in my hand, listening to the silence. No immediate call back. No chance for him to bulldoze over what I had said. Just quiet. After that, the messages kept coming. Long paragraphs from my mom about how she never raised me to be so ungrateful, and how one day I would understand when I had kids. Short, angry texts from Matt about how money had changed me and how I'd be sorry when they were gone. I muted the thread. My apartment felt almost painfully quiet without their constant emergencies buzzing in my pocket, but underneath that discomfort was something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Space. For the first time, my paycheck stayed in my account long enough for me to really see it, to see what my hard work looked like when it benefited me instead of everyone else. I moved some money into a real emergency fund and opened a small savings account labeled Future Trip, just for me. I cooked at home, drank coffee in my own kitchen instead of rushing out to deal with someone else's crisis, walked through my neighborhood in the evenings without my phone glued to my ear. I started sleeping better. Not because my life was suddenly perfect, but because I knew that if something went wrong, the money I had would actually be there for me. I honestly thought drawing that line would be the hardest part, that the worst of the drama was behind me once I survived that call. I thought they would sulk for a while, adjust, maybe learn to stand on their own. I had no idea that just 2 weeks later, the same people who laughed at the idea of including me on their trip would be facing consequences they couldn't joke their way out of, and that we're broke was about to stop being manipulation and start becoming their real reality. About 2 weeks after that fight with Matt, my phone started lighting up again, but this time it didn't look like the usual drip of, "Hey, can you help with this one bill?" It started with a short text from my mom. "Call me when you can." It said, "It's important." No emojis, no extra punctuation, just those 2 words. I stared at the message for a long time. I had promised myself I wouldn't jump every time they said urgent, because urgent had usually meant they wanted to scare me into opening my wallet. Still, something about the timing and the way those words sat there made my stomach twist. I took a deep breath, told myself I could listen without fixing anything, and called. My mom answered on the first ring, like she'd been holding the phone and waiting. She didn't even try the fake cheerful voice this time. "Rachel," she said, and I could hear she'd been crying for a while. The kind of hoarse, exhausted crying that leaves you hollow. The bank sent a final notice. We're in real trouble. For a moment, I didn't say anything. Silence had become my best shield. I let her keep talking, because when people are desperate, they tend to tell the truth without meaning to. "We're 3 months behind on the mortgage," she went on, her words spilling out fast, like saying them quickly might make them hurt less. Your father's medical bills wiped out our savings, and then with the trip and the credit cards and everything, they're threatening foreclosure. If we don't come up with the money, we could lose the house. There it was. Not a random copay, not a single late bill. The whole house. The place they always said they were protecting for the family. The house I grew up in, suddenly hanging by a thread. The old version of me would have panicked, grabbed a notebook, asked for exact numbers and dates, pulled up my banking app, started doing math in my head, already rearranging my dreams to make space for their crisis. This time, I asked a different question. When did you miss the first payment? I said. She hesitated just long enough to answer without words, then finally admitted they'd been behind for a while. They'd been juggling things, shifting cards, waiting on my brother's commission checks, hoping my dad's insurance would reimburse more. They thought they could catch up. She didn't say the rest out loud, but I heard it anyway, like a second voice under hers. They thought I would break and bail them out again, like I always did. And you still went to Orlando, I said quietly. You still chose a first-class vacation while the house was already 3 payments behind. Her grief flipped into anger so fast it was like a switch had been thrown. We needed that trip, she shot back. Your father was depressed. The kids were disappointed. Your brother was working non-stop. We thought if we just had one good week, we could come back and deal with everything. How were we supposed to know it would get this bad this fast? I almost said because you've been ignoring it for years, but I swallowed the words. Instead, I let the exhaustion show in my voice. Mom, this didn't happen in 2 weeks. This isn't about me saying no once. This is about years of spending money you didn't have and counting on me to plug the holes. She cried harder then, telling me how my dad built that house with his own hands, how many Christmases and birthdays happened under that roof, how she rocked me to sleep in that living room when I was sick. Every memory was a hook, thrown out in hopes one would catch and pull me back into my old role. If you don't help us, she said, we could lose everything. Please, Rachel, you're the only one who can fix this. That sentence used to feel like a compliment, like a badge of honor. Now it felt like a trap. I closed my eyes and pictured my own apartment, the one I paid for by getting up every morning, going to a job I didn't always love, carrying my own stress without handing it to anyone else. No one helped me keep my lights on. No one made sure my rent cleared. Mom, I said slowly, I understand how serious this is. I do. But your mortgage is not my responsibility. It never was. I've given you thousands over the years. I can't fix this for you. You and Matt need to talk to the bank. Refinance, sell, downsize, do whatever people do when they've been living beyond their means. But I'm not going to drain my future to cover your past choices. She called me ungrateful again. Said she couldn't believe she raised a daughter who would abandon her family when they needed her most. Said if my father's health got worse, it would be on my conscience. I told her I loved her. I told her I wished things were different. But my answer was still no. After we hung up, my hands were shaking again, but this time there was something else underneath the shaking. Grief, yes, for the house, for the version of my family I had believed in. But there was also relief. The rope between us had finally stopped dragging me under with them. Instead of spiraling, I did something small and practical. I opened my banking app and looked at my accounts. For the first time in years, the numbers reflected only my choices, my bills, my savings, my future. No hidden obligations disguised as family. Over the next few days, pieces of what was happening started reaching me through other people, because family drama never stays contained. A cousin mentioned Matt was taking on extra showings and side jobs, driving all over the city trying to pull in more commission, but the market was slow and he was already behind. A mutual friend told me Brittany had been venting on social media, posting long captions about how people turn their backs on you when times get tough, under photos of half-packed boxes and takeout containers. In one picture, it was clear they'd sold or moved out half their furniture. The living room I remembered from family gatherings looked bare. In a short video, I saw Liam and Ava sitting on the floor, not smiling, surrounded by cardboard boxes. No matching shirts, no Mickey ears, no first-class glow. Just 2 kids whose parents had spent years pretending consequences didn't apply to them. Watching their world shrink hurt in a way I hadn't expected. I clicked through more of Brittany's posts. Complaints about selling the SUV and downgrading to one older car. About canceling the kids' soccer and dance classes because they had to focus on essentials now. About calling the internet company to switch to a cheaper plan and cutting streaming services. One line stuck with me. We busted our butts and got judged for one nice trip. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. Reading it, I felt that familiar wave of guilt try to rise, that old reflex whispering that I should help just a little so the kids wouldn't suffer. But then the image of the airport came back, so clearly I could almost smell the coffee again. The first-class counter. The jokes about deserving something nice. Matt telling me to stay home to save them money. My mom nodding along. The way they walked past me without even knowing I was standing a few yards away. For a long time, I believed that if I ever stopped helping, they'd hate me forever and I wouldn't be able to live with it. Maybe they did hate me a little then. Maybe they sat in that half-packed living room and blamed me for every bad decision they'd ever made. But sitting in my small apartment, with my own bills paid and my own plans slowly taking shape, I realized something I should have understood a long time ago. I didn't create their situation. I just stopped cushioning it. The reality they were facing wasn't some punishment I'd imposed. It was the same reality I'd been living with quietly for years, making careful choices and sacrifices so my rent was paid and my lights stayed on. The only difference was that they were finally feeling what happens when we're broke, stops working as a magic spell and starts being a consequence. And this time, for the first time, I wasn't going to be the one who paid the bill to make it disappear. The thing about consequences is that they don't show up all at once. They seep in slowly, until suddenly everything is soaked. Over the next few months, I watched from a distance as the life my family had built on excuses, and my bank account began to fall apart. In the end, my parents had to sell the house I grew up in. They didn't lose it overnight in some dramatic foreclosure scene, but the bank made it clear there were no more extensions and no more grace. A realtor sign went up on the front lawn, and for the first time in my life, my mom couldn't spin it as anything other than what it was. The result of years of choices finally catching up. They downsized to a small rental in a less shiny neighborhood, the kind of place she used to turn her nose up at when we drove by. Matt and Brittany sold their SUV and moved out of their nice house in Katy into a smaller townhome. The kids had to switch schools. Soccer, dance, and all the extras disappeared from their schedule. The social media posts changed too. No more airport selfies with "we deserve this" captions. Just occasional pictures of takeout on the couch and vague quotes about hard times showing you who really cares, clearly aimed at me. Family members tried to guilt me into stepping in. An aunt called and said, "They're going through so much. Couldn't you just help a little?" I gave everyone the same answer. I did help. For years. They chose not to change. I'm choosing not to go down with them. Some people understood. Some didn't. But for the first time, I realized their opinion of me didn't pay my bills or build my future. While they were downsizing, I was quietly building. I kept my boundaries and, funny enough, my finances stabilized. Without constant emergencies, my credit card balance went down and my savings went up. I took a weekend trip, fully paid in cash, with no guilt attached. At work, without the emotional exhaustion of playing family savior, I had more energy. My boss noticed, and I got promoted to a bigger role with better pay. One evening, sitting in my small apartment with my promotion email open and a confirmation for a future trip to Europe in my inbox, I realized something simple, painful, and freeing all at once. I had spent years acting like my value to my family was tied to how quickly I could fix their messes. Once I stopped fixing them, they treated me like I had disappeared. But the truth was I didn't vanish. I just stopped existing in the version of the story where I was the unpaid supporting character in their drama. I wrote a new one where I was the main character in my own life. Do I feel sad that my parents lost the house? Yes. Do I wish things had gone differently? Absolutely. I would have helped them gladly if they had been honest with me. If they had included me because they loved me, not excluded me until they needed my money again. That's the line for me now. Family isn't people who share your last name and treat your income like a shared account. Family is people who see your humanity, respect your limits, and don't only call when they want something. If you're listening to this and you feel like the walking ATM of your family, Like you only matter when you're swiping your card or wiring a transfer. Hear this. Saying no doesn't make you a bad daughter, son, sister, or brother. It makes you a person with a right to your own life. The people who truly love you might be hurt, might be confused, but they will adjust. The ones who only loved what you could give them will fall away. And that will hurt, but it will also show you the truth. My mom once told me, "We're broke. We can't afford to take you on vacation." What she didn't realize was that the real thing we couldn't afford was the way they treated me. I stopped paying that price. And because of that, for the first time in a long time, I'm finally living a life I don't have to apologize for. To them or to myself. If this story touched you, like the video, subscribe for more real stories, and comment which city you're watching from.